Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Davis and you're watching Fight News Now Extra. Coming up next, our own John Pollock was at TriStar Gym in Montreal to catch up with George St-Pierre, Firas, Zahabi, and Patrick Cote ahead of UFC 154. So we have those interviews next along with our MMA panel. Let's get started. So the UFC's welterweight champion, George St-Pierre, has not stepped into the octagon since April 2011. He was close to fighting Nick Diaz a year ago. Then it was Carlos Condit he was going to face, but a nasty knee injury got in the way. So when we recently caught up with him, it sounded like he is ready for UFC 154.
It's 100%. My leg feel like I never had any surgery. Feel like 100%. I used to try to throw this big punch to end the fight, and I want to get out of there and go. I want to knock out. These people are criticizing me. Now I'm happy to be in the octagon. I'm not in a rush. I'm gonna be there and picking the guy apart, and I'm gonna see the opportunity. I'm gonna jump on it like a lion.
Like a lion, eh? Well, that's not exactly how GSP's coach Firas Zahabi explained it. But there's no doubt that GSP is hungry and looking to walk out of the octagon with the belt next weekend.
We won't know till November 17th, but I'll tell you, in practice, he's looking phenomenal. He's performing at the level he was before and more. And he's more technical, he's wiser, he's smarter, he's more cerebral when he spars now. And I really think he's going to do extremely well.
Teammate Patrick Cote will also be fighting on the November 17th card. He'll face heavy hitter Alessio Sakara, who's coming off back-to-back losses, and Cote is ready to put on a show for his hometown.
When I fought Conley, I had only 4 weeks to prepare against a very high-level fighter, and I did a lot of sparring with Costa Philippou, that is a powerful 185 boxer. The game plan is going forward, push the pace, and test his chin.
So that's the latest from TriStar Gym in Montreal. Now let's take it over to our MMA guys, John Ramdine and Robin Black. And guys, there were so many great fights last weekend. What did you think of them all?
Sarah, it was just so exciting. The World Series of Fighting live here on Fight Network, as well as Glory 3. And I look at Sandy Dahlbeck's performance. He knocked out Yoshihiro Sato, and he was in that war with Robin van Roosmalen. And Sandy Dahlbeck, a prospect in the kickboxing world. Robin, I'm sure you were thrilled.
For sure. And it was an exciting event, Glory. It really reminds you, and it should remind people, why the stand-up martial arts is so beautiful, so exciting, and so entertaining. It really was a great show.
And Robin, the name of the game is prospects. Prospects emerging all over the world. Mixed martial arts becoming a global sport. And we're going to see so many countries in the next number of years get involved. And what is the role of a prospect? We've seen guys that have inflated records at 10-0, 15-0, make their way to Bellator or the UFC, and they don't do as well as maybe a guy like Kenny Florian and Mark Bocek, who had less than 5 fights under their belt and have made an impact in mixed martial arts. What is the role of a prospect?
The path of a prospect is different now than it ever has been. And there was a point, like you mentioned, where the plan, if you were a coach or a manager, you would develop this guy, get him 5 really easy fights, and then 5 not too dangerous fights, and then maybe an ex-UFC vet and send him up. That ain't going to work anymore because everybody's wise to it. And now there are so many good fighters everywhere. From day one, you are fighting good people. So that we are able to see prospects establish themselves far quicker. You'll get a guy at 5 or 6 fights like you're alluding to, and you'll know this guy's the real deal. Those days of padding your record, they're gone.
We saw Tyrone Spong, former It's Showtime 95-kilogram champion, make his mixed martial arts debut at the World Series of Fighting and simply dismantled his opponent. He looked spectacular, but it's what we expected. We saw him use his hands, his feet, his knees, but what about the other elements of his game? Because that's what we've seen in mixed martial arts as well. Guys that have come from a jiu-jitsu background, not look great in the stand-up, and the game is to get the fight down to the ground and then work on all those other areas that you're weak. Is that what we're going to see? Guys get into the UFC and then hone their skills in other areas?
Yeah, I think so. And, there's a lot, if you're a prospect, if you're going to develop a fighter, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat or kick some ass. And, like you're saying, the old day was get the guy to the ground and submit them, then we'll learn to fight. We'll learn to fight standing up. Now we're learning that we can bring in these elite kickboxers, make sure they're not facing the world's toughest wrestler, and put on exciting fights and while they're developing in the gym with their wrestling and jiu-jitsu. But the real scary ones are those 17-year-old beasts that are developing in the TriStars and the Greg Jackson gyms all over the world, and they are developing everything at once.
We saw at the Bellator event this past weekend, Shabalat Shamalayev and Mike Richmond, two prospects essentially really lighted up, and Mike Richmond training at Minnesota Martial Arts Academy with one of the best coaches in Greg Nelson. He was taken out by Shamalayev, another prospect, and that's what we're seeing from Bellator. These guys developing young guys and trying to keep them on their roster.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if we're going to keep enjoying this sport and being a part of this sport as it develops over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, we're going to keep a close eye on these young athletes because the training is different, the coaching is different, the diet is different, the knowledge is different. So guys are getting better now, and we're going to see a whole bunch of these young monsters rumbling under the surface.
Robin, on November 30th, you're stepping back into the cage at the Slam event. It's the TriStar fights, and there's a couple of big prospects on that card. Alex Garcia, who is an animal from the TriStar gym, as well as Ayman Zahabi, who's making his professional mixed martial arts debut. And this kid is simply a killer at 0-0. A lot of people fear this guy.
Yeah, I am not one of these prospects. I am a fight being thrown on. Hopefully it's entertaining. But Ayman Zahabi, definitely in the gym, training with elite UFC guys, and by all accounts, hanging with them at the very least. This guy's there to put on a show. He's got a base-level opponent, and watch for Firas' younger brother to just put on a monster show. It's going to be a really entertaining, really fun event.
Prospects is something to watch in mixed martial arts, and one of the guys I'm going to look out for is UFC welterweight Gunnar Nelson and Sarah Davis. Mark my words, this kid is going to make a huge impact in the UFC.
Okay, well, looking forward to seeing him, but Robin, you're a big prospect in my eyes.
Oh, thanks, Esty.
Thanks, guys. So ahead of those TriStar fights, it's going to be UFC 154 in Montreal, and Fight Network is going to be bringing you tons of live coverage with the live pre-fight press conference, live weigh-ins, and even a live post-fight show. So you'll have to join us for all of that. Now, coming up next on Fight News Now Extra, we have Bellator 79.